What is up, Unleashed CEO community? Welcome to those of us joining on Facebook or on our YouTube channel. And I'm so excited to bring to you guys today another great conversation about how entrepreneurs like you who are fast scaling actually break through the growth ceilings that they're experiencing, build a self-managing team, and ultimately get back their time freedom. And in that direction, I have my friend and guest here today, Michael Mills from the Business Design Corporation, just to give you all a little bit of insight on Michael and why you should listen to what he has to say. Michael is the founder, as I mentioned, of Business Design Corporation and the Touchstone Business System. He actually worked as an E-Myth consultant under Michael Gerber's, famous E-Myth methodology for 17 years, helping tons of businesses to systemize their business and move from a people-dependent business to a process-dependent business. And as a result of that, he saw the need for better tools to help business owners actually build those processes, which is why he founded Business Design Corporation and built the Touchstone Business System, where they help business owners really build a process-dependent business and have an amazing software tool for that. So I'm super excited to have a conversation today, Michael, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you here. So really, man, today's conversation, I really want to talk about how business owners can combine processes and people to actually scale their business and get the results that they're really looking for out of their business. It's kind of fun because, we're passionate about systems as well, but one of our primary unique abilities is really helping, entrepreneurs find the implementation-minded hires that they need to actually be, that they can actually delegate to and trust and who can own responsibility. But as we always say, it's like in order to win any NASCAR race, you need a great driver and a great car. You need both to win the race. And so you kind of have the car, which is all the systems and processes and the engine and all those things. And then you need the right driver in the car. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation. And just as we get started today, Michael, I guess I would love to ask, tell us a little bit about your story in business and why you've become so convicted, why that story led you to become so convicted that people have to move from a people-dependent business to a process-dependent business.
Okay, great way to start, Richard. So first of all, I was an English and philosophy graduate from college, right? And I walked into my father's business and I thought I was going to be some fat cat making tons of money. It didn't quite work out that way working for Dad. And in 1983, I decided, when the Apple II computer came out, I thought it'd be really cool to start a software company. And it was just because, I loved working for my dad, but he wasn't anywhere near retirement. It was just going to be a bit of a grind being under my dad again, and I was 23 or 24 or something like that. So I started this company to systematize, and by that I mean actually computerize art galleries. I didn't really know what the term systematize meant at that point. So I started this company computerizing art galleries. And I grew that company. I moved it from Toronto. I'm Canadian. I grew up in Toronto, and I moved it from Toronto to New York City. So I'm in my young mid-20s, starting this business, and I'm jazzed. I'm going to be the next Bill Gates, right? This is software, hardware. I'm going to be the next Bill Gates. I'm going to, 5 years from now, I'm going to retire with millions of dollars in my pocket and a red Ferrari. And the business grew. It grew on my passion. It grew on my hard work. Again, I had no responsibilities. I wasn't married. I had no kids. I was living on a boat on the Hudson River. It cost me like $350 a month to live there. It was cheap. And I was having a gas. But I worked my butt off. I was working 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And I thought nothing of it. This is New York City. It's the city that never sleeps. And I would hire people and they would kind of do okay, but then they wouldn't, or they'd quit. If they were really good, then they'd quit. And so long story short, I sold that business 10 years later, and the business depended upon me. I was the business. I made the sales. I handled the customer complaints. I had some people working for me. Yeah, I had some employees, but it was dependent upon me. And I was working really long hours, not able to take a vacation. So who would want that job? And when I sold the business, I was always saying all this sweat equity I was putting into it is going to come. It's going to pay me back someday. Well, 10 years later, it didn't pay me back. I sold that business for exponentially less than what I thought it was worth. And why is because it depended upon me, and I was going. I didn't want to be in that business anymore. So then I moved to California, and part of selling the business was that's another story, but it was a people move. I moved to California, and it just didn't make sense. The business was in New York, and having two offices wasn't going to work. So I sold the business, and I started thinking, now what am I going to do? And I read this book, The E-Myth. And one of the things Michael Gerber says in The E-Myth is the only reason to own a business is to get more of what you want from life. And I realized I wasn't getting that from my business. And then he goes into this whole song and dance about how you need processes, because trying to get people to do what you need them to do and being able to hire them properly and being able to train them properly, you got to have these processes. And I thought, wow, that's what I was missing in my business, is how if I had processes, if I could have easily brought in and trained people to sell, trained people to do proposals, trained people to negotiate things, trained people to do customer support, so I didn't have to do all that stuff, then I could have had a little bit more freedom to do what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, about the time when I read the E-Myth, Michael started a whole course, the Certified E-Myth Consultancy course. I was one of the first. I was in the first class in the United States back in 1994, and so that was how I got started. And even doing E-Myth consulting, we started to realize that all these people would take E-Myth consulting, but they wouldn't get their processes written. And so we sort of stepped back and said, we've got to create a plan or a process, a method for how to do this. Because you and I were talking offline previously, and it's not rocket science to do this. It's not difficult. It's not easy, but it is very simple. And so we need to create a plan to do this. And we need to create a tool to make it easy to do it, because we were trying to do it in Microsoft Word, and that works for about 6 months until your processes all start to change. And so, the internet had just come on board back in 1994. Well, it was later than that, but it was 2004 when the whole idea of a web-based application came to us, and we started working on that then. So that's a long background.
What a cool story, man. I love, one of the things I love most, E-Myth is such a great book. But one of the things I love most about that book is the vision that it paints for, first of all, where most entrepreneurs really are, which is that they're not operating as like a leader and a CEO. They're the operator. The business is completely dependent around them. And then I love how he paints this picture of what a real business looks like. One that is not owner-centric. It's process dependent, with a self-managing team running those processes, giving the owner back their time freedom and helping them get more, as you said, out of life, right? More of what they want out of life. And I think, man, one of the things that we talk about a lot with our clients is like that even just, building a people dependent business, that's one problem. But an even bigger problem is an owner centric business, right? Because you can actually get by to a certain level of scale if you have great people who are owning different areas and kind of, fully taking responsibility. But if everything in the business ties back to you, all actions, all decisions, like you said in your story, you find yourself, a lot of entrepreneurs, they find themselves losing momentum about 5 years in. They've even done studies on this. And then they really lose their vision about 7 years in. And most of them quit shortly thereafter, right? So you see all of these business owners, and my heart breaks every time I talk to one of these who's on the tail end of that spectrum. and they've worked their butt off for a decade or slightly less, and they're burnt out. They haven't gotten the return out of their business that they hoped, and they're just not having fun anymore, and there's not a lot of profit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting to me to look on the flip side of that with clients who actually make the shift from being an owner-centric business to actually building a business with systems at the center that a self-managing team surrounds, and the owner actually oversees the system and leads the team. When you have that, you don't burn out. Your business is actually scalable or sellable, as you put it, and you have more fun and there's just more profit.
Right. So there, that begs the question, right, Richard? Why? Why do those people, why are they able to make the shift? Because as you said, close to 98% of entrepreneurs don't make that shift, and they burn out and they quit. And it's kind of a waste of time, right? It's 10 years of their life, because it's usually 7 to 10 years where this happens, and they do not get a return on their investment. This whole idea of sweat equity, it's just a bunch of baloney. They just work their butt off, and then there's nothing at the end of it. And it's just a waste of 10 years of their life. So why do some of those people, why were they able to make that shift? Why did that happen? Because so few do, right?
I think that's a really interesting question, man. And I think it's funny because it ties down to something that I had earlier. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I'll give you an answer since you asked me the question. Why do they make that shift? Okay, so one thing that I actually believe is that it actually starts as an identity shift first. And a lot of people don't understand this because feels very metaphysical to them, or, kind of, borderline woo-woo, Tony Robbins. Right. But it really is, right? The problem is when you build a business, it's your baby, right? It's your baby. And so you kind of, by necessity, built the business around you. Right? By necessity. I mean, you were the only one there at the beginning, right? But you built the business on your skills and your entrepreneurial strengths. And as a result of that, your value system was focused on how much you could produce, right? How much you could do. And so to the extent that someone's identity is as a producer or a performer in their business, or they have to be the guy, right, who does it, that nobody else can do it as well as they do it, right? To the extent they carry that identity, they will hit a ceiling. Now, it depends on the industry of where that mark is, but you will hit a ceiling. Typically, I find somewhere between 500,000 and 5 million in revenue. And most of the people I talk to who are in that range have this subconscious identity that they're the guy who has to do it. And therefore, they never document their processes because subconsciously, they believe that they're the one who has to do it, that it's ultimately going to end up back on them anyways, or that they really can't trust anyone else to truly care about their business the way they do. So I think it starts as an identity shift from producer and entrepreneur to actual leader and CEO, right? And that results in a value system shift of going, I'm going to invest my time to empower other people, which means documenting processes, casting vision, recruiting the best, and then actually taking pride not in how much I can produce, but in how much I can empower others to do.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I mean, if we want to just even bring it down even simpler, first of all, I want to say that when we talk about process dependency versus people dependency, it doesn't mean that we're not getting great people. You still want to get great people. I mean, Michael Gerber gives you this impression in the E-Myth that you can just walk downstairs and find some homeless person on the street, and if you have processes, he's going to be able to do the job. I don't concur. I think you got to have great processes to find great people.
Yes.
Find great people, and you've got to have great processes to keep great people. You've got to motivate them, inspire them, and appreciate them and acknowledge them. And these are management processes, by the way. But what I want to add to your very thoughtful answer to my question is that I think, first of all, it involves change, because you have to move from that sense of I'm the one that can do this, I'm in control. And I think there's a myth here that when you start moving into that CEO role, you're starting to lose control. I disagree. Well, you do lose control if you follow the concept of abdication. Like, I don't want to do, I hate money, I hate dealing with the finances, I hate doing collections, so you do it, Bob. That's abdication of responsibility. Delegation is, hey, Bob, I need you to take over collections, and here's how you do it, and here's the report I need every 2 weeks. So that's delegation of responsibility. But I think the change comes down when people get so sick and tired of their lives that they recognize, I finally have to do something differently. It's like, I can't take this anymore. I mean, think of a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening are probably, they wake up in the morning and they go, oh man, if I don't get up out of bed right now and get selling, there aren't going to be any sales made. Or I've got all these appointments that I have to get to today and no one else can do it. And I don't know how to teach anybody else how to do it because it's all up here. It's not, I mean, once you start getting to this point where you're so sick and tired of the way your life is, and I didn't start a business to be sick and tired of my life. I started a business for freedom, not to be sick and tired and completely overwhelmed my life. And it does happen around 7 to 10 years, because up until that point, you're invincible. You just think, like I said, I'm going to be the next Bill Gates. But it just doesn't happen that way. And so you do need those processes. And I think that shift has to happen when people really, really believe in the importance and value of getting that. Now their shift goes to getting those processes in place and implemented instead of selling, instead of showing up for those appointments. And there's this point where you have to do both, right? You have to sell and you have to pay attention to how you're selling so that you can write the processes and then share those processes with someone else and watch them learn. So yeah, it's a shift. It's a big shift, and it is metaphysical. It is in the mind, and I think it's important to recognize that you're not losing control. You're gaining way more control when you write those processes down and you pay attention to what it is that you're doing with the intention that you can actually give it to someone else. Because another one of those studies, Richard, is that most people they hire someone and they start training them by telling them what to do. We call that the tribal method of training. Here's how you do it. Just follow me. Do what I do. I mean, I figured it out. You can figure it out too. Well, they retain about 18%. 18%. And then they walk away and they make the rest up. And you go back to them and go, why are you doing it that way? And they say, well, that's how you told me to do it. And you go, no, I didn't. And they go, yes, you did. And it's just insane. And you go, get out of here. I'm going to hire someone else. And then they say, I just can't I can't find good people. People can't, there aren't any employees out there. And it's just not true.
Yeah.
So
totally a huge myth. And I'm so glad you said that. I think too, one of the things that's important in this conversation, because we actually talk about, it's so funny, we might see this differently, or we might just be using different language. But actually, we talk about this idea that part of making the shift as into Unleashed CEO is letting go of control, right?
Right.
But what we always say is you can stay in charge while letting go of control. And that's kind of the analogy we use, because a lot of people, they want to still control exactly how everything in their business is done. Which works typically when you're delegating very tactical tasks. It's like, hey, I want you to do XYZ this way every time. And for lack of a better word, this has been really well thought through and I don't need you to mess with this. I need you to just execute on it. But there's a level in your business. I would say you talked about abdication versus delegation. I think there's actually one more level to that. There's abdication, which is really poor, done. You dump something in someone's lap and you go figure it out. You're responsible for it now. And then there's delegation, where it's kind of like, hey, this is how this should be done. Go do it, and then keep me in the loop and update me. And then there's empowerment. And empowerment is essentially at the highest level of your organization, typically the leadership or management level, is going, this is the vision for what we want. These are the results that we're looking for, and you are the right person that I trust to actually figure out how, right? So at that level, and this doesn't work at every level of an organization, at that level, you really are letting go of control. But you're staying in charge because you've clearly defined the vision and the outcome, and then you've hired the right person who's actually typically more equipped at a brain level and a skill set level to actually define the how than you are. And if the how is not meeting the vision or the results, then you know you're off track. And then you do got to dig in and help with the how. But 8 times out of 10, CEOs do not need to be at the part that I see so many leaders struggle with is they do not define the why behind the what and get buy-in from their high-level team members on what the vision is and what the results are. And so therefore their people cannot create the how, which still creates an owner-centric structure where your people are constantly coming to you and going, how do you want this done? How do you want this done? How do you want this done? And that can only scale so far because you can only make so many how decisions a day or in a week. So instead, you have to define the why and the what of what we want, and then truly allow your highest level people to actually create a better how than you ever could that will get to the what and achieve the vision ultimately.
Yeah, we're absolutely talking the same language. We call that basically culture. You know, that vision in the business is really the corporate culture. And a lot of people hear the word vision and they go, oh, this woo-woo, you know, mission statement, vision statement. But no, you have to have a very clear mission, purpose, and values. If your values, and we all have values, like one of the values in our business, in my business, is we always do the right thing. Well, if I see someone in my business who's not doing the right thing, that's not acceptable. So those values need to be communicated and they need to be documented. I love that, what you said about control. And I totally agree. And I love that shift to in charge, because if you are trying to control things, you're not letting in new ideas. And here's another myth about systemization, that you're trying to control me. You're trying to force me to do things. I am not trying to force you to do things. This is how I think it should be done. And because I've done it this way, if you follow this way, you can achieve these expectations. But if you've got a better way and you start achieving better expectations, by all means, let's innovate this process. And that's the process of innovation.
Yes.
And letting other people into your company with great ideas. I had somebody come into my company and they said, you know, do you use LinkedIn at all to mine your database and get new leads? And I went, well, sort of sheepishly, I said, well, I've got a LinkedIn account, but I don't know what I'm doing in LinkedIn. And she said, well, you know, I know how to do that. Well, a lot of entrepreneurs would say, well, go do it. But I said, well, go do it. And can you document the system? Because if you leave, that's now my system. I need that process. You can't just do it and then leave. And then I'm going to be going, hey, wait, what was she doing? How do I do that? You know, it worked really well. How do I do that? So I capture that knowledge. This is now my process. It's my proprietary information, even though you brought it to me. And so that whole process of innovation is so important. So yeah, this idea of control.
It's so good that you say that, Michael, because I think this is where a lot of people get lost in the extremes, right? And there's kind of two ditches that I see people when it comes to combining their people and processes to actually scale. I think there's two ditches. One is like the Gerber ditch, where it's like it's all about processes and not about bringing on the right people and actually empowering them, right? And I see a lot of business owners, I've been behind the scenes of a lot of businesses that have incredibly well-documented processes in a software system, and they're still not getting the results that they want from their business. And then I've been behind the scenes of a lot of entrepreneurial companies where they actually have a great team, and their team is inconsistently high performing. And they just need to empower their people with processes and then actually go to those people and go, guess what? you own this process now, and it's your job not only to do it, but improve it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then those people improve it. And so what I say is, I've said this in the equation for, a long time, which is processes without the right people will get you consistently average results. Typically.
Right. Yeah.
The right
Or
people
less. Yeah.
without processes, the right people without processes will get you inconsistent good results or great results. But the right people with the right processes can create consistent, exceptional results, right? And so that's where we have to combine both. We have to get the right people in the right seats, who before what, have a process to develop with those people the how collaboratively, and then give them empowerment and responsibility to not only oversee those process and the results and vision that you're looking for, but create a culture where they're responsible to improve those processes. And that's how growth happens.
And think of how exciting that is. That brings us full circle, right back to how we started this conversation, where work isn't fun anymore. My business isn't fun anymore. But when you've got that balance somewhere in between those two ditches, where your business is thriving and people are having fun and ideas are being spawned and results are happening consistently, that is so bloody exciting, right? And growth is easy now. Now, growth doesn't mean that I'm overwhelmed and my life is a wreck. It means that, wow, we're making money, we're profitable. We've got these numbers and controls in place. These activities are producing results. Life is so exciting then.
Yeah.
And that's where we got to get to. It's so sad that 98% of entrepreneurs don't get there. And you and I, we talk about it. We've seen this happen. And yet that change is challenging for so many business owners because they just can't make that shift. And yeah, it is a little metaphysical, but it's so important. And I think it happens when people finally get to that place where they're just so sick and tired. And then they go, okay, how? Richard, save my life. How do I do this?
So good. Well, Michael, this conversation today was so incredibly valuable. I think just in summary, as we summarize and wrap today's show of the Unleashed CEO Show, friends, if you heard me and Michael say anything today, it's this. You have to have great people and you have to have great processes if you want to scale your business. In order to do that, you're going to need to make an identity shift that goes, I'm sick and tired of the life and the results that I have right now, and I'm ready to change. And that means I'm going to truly step into the role of CEO and leader. I'm going to shift my value system from personal production and control to people empowerment. And as a result, I'm going to get my processes documented, get the right people in the right seats to own those processes, and create a culture where we are consistently and continually improving those processes and making them better. So hopefully that helps all of you out there watching. And I hope today's episode honestly helps some of you make that identity shift and value shift from Chief Everything Officer to Unleashed CEO. So make sure you drop a comment below. Let us know what stood out to you. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Also, for whatever channel you're on, like, subscribe, follow us, and we'll continue to put out best-in-class interviews and content to help you scale your business with time freedom. Michael, thank you so much for being a part of today's show and the wisdom and experience that you brought. And I'm sure this is not going to be the last conversation we'll be having between either of our audiences.
Yeah, well, thank you, Richard. It was really, really fun to have this conversation. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It was a joy and honor. Have a great day, friends. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye-bye now.